In Tokyo, rent isn't always paid by the month. It's paid by the hour, or even the minute. For thousands, home means stitching together nights in capsule hotels, hours in manga cafes, showers in sento baths, work in 24-hour lounges, and belongings parked in coin lockers. This is not tourism, but an economic adaptation, fragmented shelter assembled from modular services. Housing here fragments because apartments average 95,000 yen a month, deposits often run 4 months up front, and rigid contracts shut out many workers. When land is scarce and leases outpace incomes, living itself becomes a series of variable, pay-per-use transactions. What does it mean when shelter is reduced to a price grid? And what pressures create a city where renting in minutes becomes normal? A day in Tokyo's hourly shelter network begins in a pod just large enough for sleep. The capsule measures about 1 meter by 2 meters, barely enough to lie flat, with a molded plastic shell, a privacy screen, and a small shelf for a phone and wallet. There is no closet, no window, and no room to stand. Morning starts with the soft glow of a built-in light and the hum of other users sliding open their screens. Belongings are minimal, pared down to a backpack or suitcase, since storage is rented separately in coin lockers scattered near stations. These lockers, often accessed by QR code or PIN, hold everything that does not fit in a single bag: change of clothes, work shoes, toiletries, each item retrieved or stashed as the day's circuit demands. After leaving the capsule, the next stop is hygiene. Sento baths, or the shower stalls attached to manga cafes, offer a place to wash up. Access is controlled by app or kiosk. Select a time slot, scan a code, and wait for a cubicle to free up. Towels and soap can be rented for an extra fee, and time is closely monitored. Some users combine shower and breakfast, grabbing a vending machine coffee in the same building before heading out. For work, the day divides again. Desk booths, partitioned cubicles rented by the hour, fill the city's commercial towers and train station basements. Each booth comes with a power outlet, Wi-Fi, and just enough space for a laptop. Reservations run through touchscreen terminals or phone apps, with peak hours booked in advance. Between jobs or shifts, some users rest in 24-hour lounges or manga cafes, where reclining chairs and all-you-can-drink soda machines blur the line between workspace and shelter. At night, the circuit repeats. Check availability for a capsule or cafe, pay for a night pack, and secure a spot to sleep. Every node, sleep, hygiene, storage, work, is physically separate, connected only by transit and a stream of micropayments. This is not a single home, but a web of modular services stitched together, each with its own rules and time limits. For many, it is the only way to assemble the basics of shelter in a city where space is always at a premium. In 2024, Tokyo's shelter network is shaped by numbers that leave little room for flexibility. The average monthly rent for a studio apartment in the city stands at about 95,000 yen, or roughly $600. But that headline figure only scratches the surface. Securing a lease typically requires 4 months' rent up front. 2 months are for deposit and key money, and 2 months are for the first and last month, bringing the initial outlay close to 380,000 yen, or more than $2,500. For many, especially those working on short-term contracts or in the gig economy, this level of liquidity is out of reach. An urban economist explains that these barriers are not accidental. They are the product of land scarcity and zoning rules that tightly ration buildable space. In Tokyo's central wards, the floor area ratio, FR, averages between 200 and 400%, capping how much floor space can be built on any given plot. While some commercial zones allow FARs as high as 1,300%, most residential areas are much more limited. The effect is a relentless upward pressure on land prices. In 2023, the average price per square meter in central Tokyo rose for the 11th consecutive year, with commercial land up 4.5% and residential land up 3%. As land becomes more expensive and supply remains fixed, rents rise faster than wages. Rent-to-income ratios in Tokyo now regularly exceed 40% for single earners under the median income, far above the 30% threshold considered affordable. The result is a system where traditional leases are increasingly mismatched to the realities of flexible work and irregular pay. Gig workers, contract employees, and even some full-time staff find themselves excluded, not by culture, but by economics. The hourly capsule model emerges directly from these constraints, offering shelter without the need for deposits, paperwork, or long-term commitment. What looks like fragmentation is, in fact, a market adaptation to structural scarcity and liquidity barriers. A single night in a manga cafe or capsule hotel starts with a night pack, typically priced at 2,500 yen for 8 to 12 hours. Add-ons accumulate quickly. A shower runs 300 yen, a locker for storing a bag costs 500 yen, and a one-time membership fee is 110 yen. Multiply those by daily use, and the arithmetic becomes clear. Over 25 nights, just the basic night packs total 62,500 yen. Showers and lockers, if used daily, add another 20,000 yen or more. Even with minimal extras, the monthly outlay for piecemeal shelter can land between 65,000 and 85,000 yen, not counting daytime work booths or food. Receipts itemize every step, each small transaction tracked, each service billed separately. Compare this to a fixed studio lease at 95,000 yen per month, which covers a private room, but demands a 4-month lump sum upfront. The capsule model sidesteps deposits and paperwork, but the flexibility comes at the cost of constant, visible spending. For some, the cumulative math of variable shelter costs stays just under the threshold of a traditional apartment, but for others, especially during peak periods or with frequent add-ons, the total can quietly surpass it. Fragmented shelter comes with hidden costs that do not appear on a receipt. Sleep in capsules and lounges is rarely deep or uninterrupted. Research on shift workers and shared sleeping environments shows that when rest is broken into short stretches, the body spends less time in slow-wave sleep, the stage needed for memory consolidation and physical repair. A sleep scientist at Keio University calls this a chronic deficit, not simply tiredness. She notes that people think they can catch up on weekends, but fragmented sleep is like a tax on the brain, and the bill arrives as slower reaction times, poorer focus, and higher stress. Lab studies find that after just 1 week of disrupted sleep, average cortisol levels rise by 12%. This stress hormone spike is linked to decision fatigue and mood swings. Productivity drops are measurable. Cognitive tests show a 15% decline in task performance, even when total hours slept seem adequate. Reaction times slow and errors increase, especially in jobs that demand focus. Over time, the cycle of constant movement, from capsule to locker to booth, compounds the strain. The hourly shelter network may solve for liquidity, but it cannot bend the biological limits of human rest. The city's pricing model meets its first real constraint not in the wallet, but in the body's need for deep, continuous sleep. The hourly shelter network in Tokyo depends on a city built for constant movement and access. Around the clock, trains and subways run with headways as short as 3 minutes, even after midnight on some lines. Convenience stores, over 7,000 across the 23 wards, line nearly every block, open day and night, supplying food, toiletries, and payment terminals. Vending machines fill the gaps, offering drinks and snacks at any hour. Public Wi-Fi blankets major stations, while coin lockers and automated kiosks make it possible to retrieve belongings or book a booth without human contact. This dense web of services transforms the city itself into an extended apartment where shelter, storage, and sustenance are always within reach. Without this infrastructure, continuous transit, high service density, and automated access, the hourly model would collapse under the weight of its own fragmentation. Only in a city engineered for seamless, late-night connectivity does this distributed system of living become viable. Capsule hotels, manga cafes, and hourly lounges operate under commercial licenses, not as residential housing. This legal distinction allows operators to set prices freely, with no rent controls, no tenancy security, and no obligation to treat regular users as residents. A municipal planner points out that these facilities are registered as services, skirting housing codes that would require minimum light, ventilation, or long-term leases. The absence of formal tenancy means users have no eviction protection and can be turned away at any time. For those relying on hourly shelter, the lack of savings is built in. There is no equity, no deposit to reclaim, and no path to stable housing. The system also mismatches Tokyo's aging population and those seeking family formation, since commercial zoning favors high turnover and singles. Policy loopholes persist, leaving a growing share of the city ineligible for housing subsidies or long-term security. This fragmented model solves for liquidity and access, but exposes deep gaps in urban planning and social protection. Today, time-sliced shelter is not an experiment. It is the market's answer to unyielding land constraints and rising rent-to-income ratios. As pay-per-use living spreads, the question isn't whether this model works, but what it costs a city's stability, resilience, and capacity for real permanence. Share your perspective below.